Don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments section, and subscribe to the channel to stay updated with our latest stories.
It was one of those nights where the silence felt louder than any noise. The clock ticked steadily in the background, each second a tiny hammer against Sophia's nerves. Wrapped in an old knit blanket, she sat curled on the edge of the couch, her fingers tight around a lukewarm cup of chamomile tea. The house was still, unnervingly so. Ethan wasn't home yet. He had gone out with Lucas hours ago, like he often did, but something about tonight felt different, off. Maybe it was the way Ethan's eyes lingered on his phone before he left. Maybe it was the look Lucas gave her when she waved goodbye. Whatever it was, Sophia couldn't shake it. The walls around her, once comforting, now seemed to close in, pressing with questions she didn't know how to ask. Outside, wind rustled through the trees, brushing against the windows like whispers trying to get in. She told herself to relax, but her body wouldn't listen. There was a weight in the air, a tension she couldn't name, but could feel deep in her bones. Tonight wasn't just quiet. It was the calm before something, though she didn't yet know what. And that made it all the more unsettling. Sophia had nearly drifted off when the soft creak of the front door snapped her upright. She wasn't expecting it, certainly not this late. Her pulse quickened as she turned toward the sound, half expecting Ethan, half hoping it was just her imagination. But it wasn't Ethan. Standing in the doorway, bathed in the dim amber light from the hallway, was Lucas. His figure was still, almost hesitant, hands shoved deep into his coat pockets, shoulders slightly hunched like he was carrying something heavier than the night itself. For a heartbeat, neither of them spoke. Their eyes locked in a moment that stretched far too long, charged with something unspoken, something Sophia couldn't yet name. "Hey," he said finally, his voice scratchy, as if it had traveled through too much silence to reach her. Ethan knocked out on the couch. "I didn't want to leave just yet. Thought maybe we could talk." His words were casual, but the undertone wasn't. There was a tightness in his jaw, a flicker in his gaze, like someone on the verge of a confession. Sophia nodded, motioning to the couch beside her. "Sure, Lucas. Sit." Her voice felt distant to her own ears. As he walked toward her, every step sounded louder than it should. Something was off, undeniably off, and she felt it wrap around her like cold fog. She didn't know what he was about to say, but the tension already prickled at her skin. Whatever this was, it wasn't just a late-night visit. Lucas sat beside her, but not too close, just enough to share the same space without truly entering it. The weight of his silence was heavier than any words he could have spoken. Sophia watched him waiting, the room dim and thick with unease. He looked at his hands, fidgeting, as if he were building courage from the friction of his own fingers. "You ever wonder if the people we love are hiding parts of themselves?" he asked, his voice quiet, almost swallowed by the hum of the refrigerator in the distance. Sophia blinked, unsure how to respond. It wasn't the kind of question you ask without a reason. "What are you trying to say?" she replied, her tone careful, the hairs on her arms prickling. Lucas didn't meet her gaze. "Sometimes we think we know someone, think we know everything about them. But what if we're wrong? What if there are pieces of their life, their past, that we're never meant to see?" His words weren't random. They were placed, intentional, laced with a sadness that made Sophia's chest tighten. It wasn't just about Ethan anymore. It was about the unspoken, the veiled, the fragile truths dancing just out of reach. "Lucas," she said, heart thudding, "is there something you need to tell me?" He looked up finally, eyes tired and filled with something deeper than fear, regret. "Not from me," he whispered. "But you deserve to know. And it's time you asked the right person." The warning had been delivered. The moment Lucas left, the silence crashed back in like a wave. But this time it wasn't quiet, it was charged. Every creak of the floorboard, every rustle outside felt amplified, like the house itself was bracing for something. Sophia sat motionless, her cup cold in her hands but her mind a storm. One moment, she was sipping tea and waiting for her husband. The next, she was unraveling. What did Lucas mean? What wasn't she seeing? Her thoughts darted in every direction. Was Ethan hiding something about his past? About their marriage? Or worse, about Lucas? The possibility chilled her. Had there been something between the two of them? Something deeper than friendship? She hated that her mind went there. But once the seed was planted, it grew like ivy, fast and consuming. Every memory, every odd glance between them, every weekend the two had vanished for catching up now seemed tinted in suspicion. Sophia's heart beat faster, her breath shortening as the weight of uncertainty grew. Her trust in Ethan had always been her anchor. Now that anchor felt like it was dragging her into dark, unfamiliar waters. She stood pacing, trying to shake off the panic. No accusations yet, she told herself. But the fear wouldn't subside. She felt like a character in someone else's story, tossed into a plot twist without warning. And the worst part? She didn't even know what she was fighting yet. Only that whatever it was, it had already begun to change everything. Sophia didn't remember walking to the kitchen. Her body moved on instinct, but her mind was elsewhere, caught in a whirlwind of what-ifs and unseen truths. The hum of the refrigerator and the faint clink of glass felt like distant echoes in a dream. She poured a glass of water with trembling hands, hoping the cold would anchor her, steady her. But it did little to slow the rising tide in her chest. Then came the sound, a soft shuffle of feet behind her, the creak of a familiar floorboard. She turned slowly, almost afraid of what or who she might see. Ethan stood there half-shadowed in the doorway, his hair tousled from sleep, eyes foggy with confusion. "Can't sleep either?" he asked, his voice thick and raw. The sight of him, so familiar, so normal, clashed violently with the storm raging inside her. How could he look so calm when her world was spinning? How could he stand there, unchanged, when nothing felt the same? She wanted to scream, to demand answers, to shake the truth out of him. But instead she whispered, "Lucas said something tonight." The words hung in the air like lightning waiting to strike. She watched Ethan's face closely. There was a flicker, a tension in his jaw, the briefest narrowing of his eyes. And that was enough. The storm wasn't just inside her anymore. It had entered the room. The temperature dropped, the air thickened. Everything was shifting. Sophia knew without a doubt this conversation would leave nothing untouched. Ethan's silence stretched between them like a wire pulled taut, fragile, ready to snap. Sophia stood frozen, her breath shallow. Her eyes locked onto his. She saw it then, not guilt exactly, but a burden he could no longer carry. "There's something I never told you," he said, his voice so low it barely rose above the hum of the kitchen light. Her pulse quickened, and the glass in her hand suddenly felt too heavy. "It's about Lucas," he continued, eyes flicking away. "We've had a complicated history. More than just friendship. Something emotional. Something we never should have let happen." His words struck like thunder. Sophia felt the room tilt, as though gravity itself had betrayed her. "What do you mean?" she asked, though deep down she already knew. Ethan swallowed hard, rubbing his temples like he could erase the truth from his mind. "It wasn't physical," he said quickly, "but it was real. Real enough to shake the ground under us. It ended years ago, but I never stopped feeling guilty. Never stopped being afraid you'd see it in my eyes." Sophia's heart pounded, not because of rage, but because of the overwhelming complexity of it all. This wasn't just a lie. It was an unspoken world Ethan had carried beside her, hidden in plain sight. Her legs weakened, and she reached for the counter, grounding herself, as everything she thought she knew fractured. The confession had come, and with it, the certainty that their life, her life, would never be the same again. Sophia couldn't speak. The room spun slowly around her, though she hadn't moved an inch. Ethan's words echoed like a bell tolling at the edge of something sacred. We shared something more. How long had she lived alongside a truth that shaped her life without her knowing? Her marriage, her trust, her quiet certainty in Ethan. All of it now carried a shadow she had never seen coming. It wasn't just the emotional entanglement that gutted her. It was the years that had been buried, neatly tucked beneath Sunday breakfasts, anniversary kisses, and laughter that now felt rehearsed. This wasn't a single moment of betrayal. It was a hidden history, threaded into the very fabric of their life together. How many smiles had masked guilt? How many conversations had danced around this secret? The realization clawed at her chest. She couldn't stop replaying moments in her mind, watching them dissolve into something less innocent. Even Lucas's warmth, his kindness, now felt like something stolen. "Why didn't you tell me?" she whispered, not really expecting an answer, because there was no good one. Ethan's face crumpled. His mouth open, but the words failed him. He looked smaller somehow, like a man finally stripped of the weight he'd carried, only to realize he'd passed it on to her. Sophia backed away, not in anger but in disbelief. The world she thought she lived in, the marriage she believed was honest, had shifted. And now all that remained was the crushing weight of everything left unsaid. The storm inside Sophia didn't roar. It seethed. Her anger came in waves, not flames. One moment, her hands trembled with fury at the betrayal. The next, her chest ached with the tenderness of a love still very much alive. How could both exist at once? How could she loathe what Ethan had hidden and still feel the pull of everything they'd built together? She stood there, suspended in a war between rage and compassion. Part of her wanted to scream at him, to throw something, anything, to make him feel just a fraction of what she was carrying. But another part, quieter but no less fierce, saw the man before her, wrecked with guilt, eyes shining with remorse. He wasn't cruel. He wasn't malicious. He was human, flawed and frightened just like her. And that made it worse. If he had been a monster, it would have been easy to walk away. But instead he was Ethan, the man who held her when her mother died, who whispered silly things to make her laugh, who made her coffee exactly how she liked it every morning. That man had betrayed her, yes, but he had also loved her. Sophia's heart felt like it was splitting down the middle, torn between the pain of the past and the possibility of forgiveness. She looked at him, and in his silence she saw a plea, not for pardon but for understanding. And she realized then, he hadn't just broken her trust. He had broken them, and she didn't know if it could ever be made whole again. The house had never felt so unfamiliar. Every photo on the wall, every shared memory tucked into corners of the home now looked like props in a carefully curated illusion. Sophia moved through the rooms like a ghost, her footsteps muffled by the weight of realization. Her marriage had been slowly unraveling, and she hadn't even noticed. It wasn't loud or dramatic. It was subtle, quiet. The kind of erosion that happens in silence, behind warm smiles and polite kisses. Now that the truth was out, every ordinary moment seemed suspicious. Every loving gesture tainted with second-guessing. She couldn't stop questioning. Was he thinking of Lucas during that vacation? Did he look at me and feel guilt instead of love? The questions clawed at her sanity, turning once precious memories into puzzle pieces that no longer fit. She wanted to rewind time, to find the moment it all started coming apart, but there was no clear beginning. Just a slow, invisible unraveling until now, when everything finally fell into her lap in pieces. And Lucas, his role in all of it only deepened the sting. He hadn't just betrayed her trust. He had quietly lived alongside it, smiling, sharing dinners, laughing at jokes. It felt like she'd been the last one to know she was living in someone else's secret. The weight of that truth pressed against her ribs. Her marriage hadn't just cracked, it had fractured from the inside out. And Sophia wasn't sure if she was standing in the ruins, or just the beginning of collapse. In the stillness of the early morning, long after Ethan had gone to bed and the house had settled into uneasy quiet, Sophia sat alone on the edge of the couch, where it all began. Her robe pulled tightly around her, as if she could shield herself from the truth now living in every corner of the home. The silence wasn't peaceful anymore. It was loaded with questions, haunted by the sound of Ethan's confession and Lucas's cryptic warning. She had a choice to make, but it wasn't simple. This wasn't just about staying or leaving. It was about identity, about self. Who was she, now that the life she thought she knew had shifted so violently? Could she rebuild with Ethan, knowing a part of him had always belonged to someone else? Could she ever look at Lucas again, without feeling the sting of betrayal? The crossroads she stood at wasn't marked by clarity. One path led toward forgiveness, hard won and uncertain. The other toward freedom. But with it, 1,000 unanswered questions and a grief she hadn't yet named. Sophia's eyes blurred with unshed tears as the sky outside began to lighten. The world was waking, but she felt stuck in place. Not broken, not whole, just in between. Maybe healing would come, in time. Maybe love could survive this fracture. Or maybe the bravest thing she could do was walk away. Whatever she chose, she knew one thing. Life as she knew it was gone. The next step was entirely her own. In today's world, where emotional connections can blur lines and secrets are easier to hide behind screens and silence, Sophia's story reminds us of the quiet dangers of emotional infidelity and unspoken truths. It's not just betrayal that shatters trust, but the long hidden silence that comes with it. If you're in a relationship, communicate often, honestly, and bravely. Don't wait for tension to erupt before addressing what feels off. And if you're hurting, give yourself permission to ask hard questions and demand clarity. Healing begins not with answers, but with the courage to seek them, no matter where they lead.